This Asian American beautiful young lady is clocking our own people. You guys already know that according to some Asians, the reason why they are not getting into those schools is because of Black people. The reason why they are not getting there is because majority of the sports have been given to Black people. Black people are the reason why they are not getting into school. Black people are the only one who benefit from affirmative action. According to them, that is not true. There was a particular guy that went viral online as well that was, blaming Black people for not being able to get to all these high schools. And, he literally just puts the entire blame on Black people. This Asian American lady is clocking her own people and reminding them how they have up affirmative action. Without wasting much time, let's get right into what this lady has to say.
Let's yap about how Asian Americans fucked up affirmative action. Guys, I'm running on a broken nail and a Celsius, and I'm so angry. The worst part was that this was just a part of some ploy from a white man. There are three things that are important to talk about in this case. Number one, it's important to understand what affirmative action is. Two, how white supremacy actually pits people of color against each other, and Asian Americans, I'm looking at you and your fucking dumbasses. And the interesting dynamic of Asian Americans with other POC communities, particularly the Black community. So, what's affirmative action? Affirmative action is a policy that came about during the Civil Rights era that sets systematic procedures within federal policy to ensure that historically marginalized groups were given opportunities for advancement and inclusion, particularly within college admissions. What I want everyone watching this to understand is that affirmative action, contrary to popular belief, is not a ticket into college, especially if you are a person of color. It's not. In fact, affirmative action was actually created just to ensure that white legacy kids weren't the only people given opportunities to actually succeed in white society. Because of a lot of Black activists during the Civil Rights era, all people, not just Black people within the United States now actually had a chance of doing well in America. Now, affirmative action was already deeply unpopular because anytime white people have to share something that should be for the rest of us, they get a little bit, bitchy. It also upset a lot of people from the Asian American community, particularly because of two things. One was because a lot of people grew up under the model minority myth, which was this myth that led a lot of us to believe that we were the exception, that we were, the good minority that just followed through with all of the rules and procedures that white people had already set for us. And the second thing is just the idea of the American dream. A lot of Asian people just happen to be immigrants, not all of us, of course, but it also essentially allowed us to believe that, if we worked hard, we would get it. Obviously, that's not true. I work really hard, and all I have is anxiety and depression. The federal ruling for affirmative action starts to collapse when this 18-year-old named John Wang, who has a 1590 SAT score and a very good GPA, gets really butthurt about the fact that he didn't get to a bunch of elitist schools. And he starts talking about this a lot on media, and he basically claims that the reason that he didn't get into these schools is because he's Asian American. Now, I don't think that this is entirely untrue, because I do believe that people of color in general have a harder time getting into more traditional elitist schools. However, the issue that I have with this little twat is that he claimed that African Americans actually have an easier time getting into these schools because of affirmative action. He ends up going to this organization called the Students for Fair Admissions that basically is just this whole thing that's against affirmative action entirely and has been since it was ever created. What happens is that they give him this calculator and basically tell him that with his stats, if he was a Black person, he would have a 95% chance of getting admitted into Harvard. Truly? Where are they finding this calculator, and where can I destroy it? Because that doesn't even make any sense. The case eventually gets picked up by someone named Edward Blum, who is the head of Students for Fair Admissions. Not only is he the head of this dumbass organization, he's also a white Republican litigator who literally has decades worth of experience trying to dismantle everything that happened within the Civil Rights era because he just hates people of color that much. Particularly, this man has been looking, searching, desperately praying for a reason to dismantle affirmative action. And the funniest thing is that he doesn't even have actual experience as a litigator. He is professionally known as an amateur litigator who just doesn't like people of color and seeing us winning, apparently. Him and his groupies at his little org basically take all of these testimonies from Asian American people like John Wang and create a case against Harvard that he takes all the way to the Supreme Court to essentially argue that affirmative action is actually discriminatory against Asian Americans and the rest of the population. And it's so embarrassing at the fact that Asian Americans were getting used by this white man, and we fell for it. We fell for it so hard because of the internal racism that we have within ourselves. But when I say ourselves, Asian American community, you know which particular one I'm talking about. You know which subset I'm angry at. In June of 2023, the Supreme Court decides to side with Edward Blum and says that affirmative action is actually unconstitutional under the Equal Protection Act of the 14th Amendment. So basically, this little white man, he gets his way simply just because Asian Americans don't know how to use critical thinking when it comes to this, and realizing that this actually isn't going to help us out in the long run. Edward Blum dismantles decades of hard work done by Black activists to make sure that not only their community, but the rest of us are set to go when it comes to college admissions. Make it a little bit more fair, because it's never going to actually be equal, but at least make it a little bit better. And we fell for it. We fell for it because Asian Americans, sometimes we're idiots. There was this survey done with Asian Americans in college, and it turns out that an overwhelming majority of us actually support affirmative action and understand why it's important. It's just a small portion of our community that just decides to scream the loudest because they still have it in their head that we are the model minority, that we have to follow through with the American dream. I also feel like it erases a lot of the actual very intense history Asian Americans have with activism within the United States, particularly in conjunction and in gratitude with the Black community. Think about Yellow Peril supports Black power during the Civil Rights era, and the Black community support of Asian Americans during protests against the Vietnam War. And as a gay Filipino first-gen American, I remember hearing about this court case and essentially crying when I found out that affirmative action was going to get repealed. Not having affirmative action basically protects people who would rather not see people like me enter into spaces where we can actually enact change for the better. It protects people like Edward Blum who want to make sure that our country stays a white supremacist country. And for Asian Americans, those that are watching this that have come to believe that, Black people are taking all of the opportunity away from us, they're not. There is someone who's doing that. Things aren't going to change because you worked hard. Things are going to change because you realize that the system that you're working under is inherently not made for you. And there are people that want to change that. You just have to open up your mindset. And Edward Blum. Edward Blum. If I am going to hell, I am going to make sure to drag you down with me.
Shout out to this creator because she literally hits the nail on the head. And the fact that she learned all of this in high school is very, very impressive, actually. Asian Americans are obsessed with affirmative action without actually reading why they created affirmative action. They always think that Black people are the one who benefits the most from affirmative action. And I love how she pointed out the fact that it's not only the grades, sometimes they look at you at the activities as well. And, other areas where you can possibly perform and the things that you can do aside from good grades. And they always think that they don't get into that school. They believe they have good grades. Why are they not getting into the school? Why are Black people getting into the school? Black people are taking their spot for something that was originally created to benefit palm-colored people especially, and now they are dumping on Black people, saying Black people are the reason why they're not getting it. Now that it has been out of it, what's up? Like, what has been going on? Because we're still seeing so many people coming online to complain about them not getting into school, and how getting into school is now way harder than when the affirmative action wasn't clear. Let me know what you guys think about what this lady said. Let's continue this conversation in the comment section, and I will see you guys in the next one.